find your passion, it ignites you as a person. You just feel awesome. Hello, what is going on? It is so great to see you. Do me a favor, and if you've seen more than one of my videos, go ahead and check to see if that subscribe button is gray. If it's gray, you're good. If it's red, you gotta just tap it. Just, you know what to do. You know what to do. All right. So my last video was entitled, it was very entitled. No, it was titled, Why Competitions Matter. And one of our sisters commented, and she's like, because I asked, have you thought of competing lately? And if any of you watching, feel free to answer that question as well. And she says, yes, I look forward to competing someday. I'm a baby, brand new white belt, so I wanted to build competency before I go to compete. Thankfully, competition is a big part of the culture where I've started training. My goal is to compete within 18 months since I only train 1 to 2 times per week. What do you think on the time frame? So I started typing up a paragraph and realized I could just tell you. This is much better way of communicating. All right, so there are 3 parts to this, and I will tell you a couple of stories, sis. All right? Okay, so the first part of your question is like, I want to feel, I'm so sorry about that honking. It's like every time you start a video, there's always some sort of noise. All right, so here's the thing. All right, here's the thing that I am so sorry about that noise, that we typically feel like. All right, so last time I trained, I went and I did some MMA rounds, and one of the females who trains, she is a blue belt. The story is going to highlight this point. She's a blue belt and she wanted to do MMA rounds, and she asked me, hey, what is the criteria in order for me to be completely competent in doing MMA rounds? And I made a video of it, and she was like, oh man, I need to do more sparring before I even think about doing MMA rounds. Fast forward, I train again, and one of the guys who's really good at wrestling, he's a really good wrestler, they had just finished rolling, and our coach was like, hey, you get on some gloves, why don't you do some rounds with us? So I'm standing with him, and he's like, Crystal, I have no idea what to do. So I'm just kind of jabbing, and I'm getting his nose starts to bleed a little, but it's fine. He usually gets bloody noses, so it wasn't that big of a deal. And he's like, I don't know what to do. And I was just like, dude, you're good at wrestling, you can shoot, this is MMA, you can shoot. And so of course he goes for the double leg. But what the point is I don't know, I don't want to say it's a female or male thing or whatever. I don't want to put boundaries on things, but certain type of people, maybe more type A people, need to feel like they are fully complete before they just dive into something. So this gets me on the topic of when you say I want to feel completely competent before I go into my first match, my first jiu-jitsu tournament. And yes, there is an element to that is yes, you want to be proficient, but also there's this other element that gets us every time that you need to watch out for, of you will never feel completely ready for a tournament. There's always, at least for me anyways, there's always this little part of me, because you can never train to a completion. This is an ongoing process. The only time you will feel completely ready to compete as a white belt is maybe that one day before you get your blue belt. And then you have to wait how many years to compete then at blue belt before you feel a completely, ready as a blue belt. So here's another story to highlight this point. When I first started jiu-jitsu, I have a video posted of my first competition. I posted it on this channel 3 years ago, but it was actually 5 years ago. And I competed within my first months of jiu-jitsu, and I did it with a different expectation. So it all depends on what your goal is for the competition, I would recommend a good goal for a competition isn't to be like, I want to be completely proficient. Like, you want to have like some level of like, you need to know the basic positions, but you also want a goal of like, I want to do it like for the experience. That way you will allow yourself to compete in an earlier time frame. When we wait like 18 months to compete, like that's a long time. Like, I competed within probably like 4 months of doing jiu-jitsu. It might have been like 3 months. I was very, very like dedicated. So I would say, like, think about maybe competing a little bit sooner, and think about like, okay, like setting your expectation of like, okay, I am just gonna like do this because it is a good experience and because of like all the other reasons that I listed in my previous video. And even when I trained, when I entered my first competition, I actually won a match. I did not win against the 3-stripe blue belt. I went in as a white belt, obviously. I was brand new, because, you know, at that time there wasn't a lot of females competing. They had combined all of the belt classes together. So we had a blue belt in our white belt group who had at that time maybe 3 MMA fights. She was a striped blue belt. So I obviously lost that one, but against the other white belts, like, I actually held my own. So don't undersell yourself on what you're able to do in a competition, and try not to hold yourself back from competing in a long range time frame. Like, maybe set a goal for yourself of like, hey, look, like, I'm gonna go into this competition in 6 months. I'm not gonna have any expectations. I'm just gonna see what it's like. It's gonna be like my warm-up competition. And then after that warm-up competition, where the results really don't matter, it's just my warm-up, then after, we'll do one at a 6-month mark, and then at like the year mark, we'll do another one. But don't feel like you have to have just this one competition that's the end all be all. Like, girl, do a couple of competitions. Like, don't even tell people that you're doing it. Like, that way you can go, and even if you lose every match, like, nobody's gonna know about it. This is just like the warm up. So yeah, I just encourage you to do it a little bit, just think about doing it a little bit sooner, not put so much pressure on like feeling like you have to be this like complete white belt. Like, yeah, we want things to be proficient and pretty, but like having the experience is also really good. And another thing too, like when you say like, when beginner, since like it seems like you're a beginner white belt, when we say train, like the more experienced people view training as like actual rolling. So if you are actually training like rolling 1 to 2 times a week, that is amazing. You can definitely compete sooner. If you consider training like just going to class, then I definitely recommend that you start like rolling at least 1 or 2 rounds like after class. I know at the beginning it can be a little bit daunting, but you definitely want some rolling experience afterwards, because I've talked to some beginners, and some beginners classify training as going to class, but you definitely want like actual rolling experience before going to a competition. So my all in all recommendation is like, I'm so proud of you for thinking about competing and setting that goal of like, yeah, 18 months, I am going to have a I'm going to enter a jiu-jitsu competition, and my goal for that competition is to show my proficiency in jiu-jitsu in 18 months. To me sounds like the goal of a like 2 or 3 stripe white belt. Another really good goal of a 0 to 1 stripe white belt is, hey, look, I am just getting into this sport. I am not the best in my belt class yet because of the time that I've been spent training, but I want to test what I have so far built in this competition, because sometimes we feel like we have to build this beautiful thing and we're perfectionists. I felt this way too about even like doing videos of like, you always have to compete with yourself about like, is this good enough? But what's really important is like, don't put pressure on yourself to try to build this complete, beautiful thing. It's okay to test parts of it as you go and be like, okay, like I want to build this little part of my game. Like I want to test my escapes and this one submission. And then go into, you know, your first competition with that in mind, to test that out or just to see what it's like. So that'll help you because it will give you a closer goal, and it will also help you besides the experience, but it will also help you in your like far-reaching goal as well, because you won't feel as much, you know, pressure. Like having just one competition, like that's like, whoa, like you a couple, girl. I mean, like, but yeah, so thank you so much for watching. Thank you for that question. As a beginner, as like a new beginner, you know, it's like you want to like build something and you want it to be like so perfect and shiny, but sometimes like it's okay to test the small little parts, you know what I mean? Like it's perfectly fine. Like I went to my first jiu-jitsu competition and I was like, here's my polished turd of jiu-jitsu skill. Let's go up against other polished turds and see what happens, because like, you know, white belts, like we're all, yeah. Well, yeah. When I was, you know, white belt now, my jiu-jitsu was slightly shinier, slightly shinier turd. I'm just kidding. Self-deprecation. All right, so thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for that question. You know, that's something that obviously is felt from a competitive standpoint, both in entering a jiu-jitsu competition or tournament and also entering something like MMA. Like my advice, you know, looking back, like I would tell Melissa, like, girl, just, you're a blue belt and you're an awesome blue belt, and just do it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes like learning by fire is good too. Like you don't have to be perfect. You can learn as you go, which is also pretty valuable too. All right, so thank you for watching, and yeah, subscribe if you like, if you made it all the way to the end. Come on, girl, you know. All right, so until next time.